Hi everybody, today we're going to be talking about lesson 39, multiplying by two-digit numbers. Now, some of you may be saying, Mrs. Pendry, this is very simple, I can do this. I know you can, but we are also going to be talking about division using the distributive property, so I would like you to go ahead and watch today's screencast. All right, example 1, multiplying 43 times 12. You are, of course, going to write the original problem, and then I'm going to rewrite it. 43 times 12. Whenever you multiply by a two-digit number, you always start with the ones place, just like you were multiplying by a one-digit number. So 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 4 is 8, and now I'm done multiplying by the ones digit. Now I'm going to multiply by the tens digit, and this is like saying I'm multiplying by a 10. Whenever I multiply by 10, I have to have a 0 down here. Think of it as a placeholder, or think of it as multiplying by 10. 10 times 43. So now that I have the 0 in the ones place, I can now multiply by 1. And I go back to the ones place and I multiply right to left. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 4 is 4. And now I take these two numbers and I add them up. These two numbers here are called partial products. And they're called partial products because the answer to a multiplication problem is called the product. Partial means you don't have all of it. You have a part of it or a piece. So I'm multiplying, here's my first piece and here's my second piece. And now I add them together in order to get my full product. So 516 then is my product. It is my final answer. Now, the reason I know that these are partial products is because if I take 43 and I use the distributive property, I'm going to multiply it times, actually let me back up, hang on. If I use the expanded form like we have talked about the last couple of days for 12, the expanded form of 12 is 1 times 10 plus 2 times 1. The number times the value, or the digit times the value. So this would be like saying 10 plus 2. Well, I can use expanded form to talk about my multiplication. I can say that this problem is 43 times 10 plus 43 times 2. I'm distributing this 43 into my expanded form. So this is where my partial products come from. Here I did 2 times 43 and got a partial product of 86. And then I multiplied 10 times 43 and got this partial product down here of 430. And I added them together to get 516. So this is where we use the distributive property and expanded form. So I want you to use this way unless it specifically asks you to use the distributive property. In your lesson practice, I believe only G is going to ask you to use the distributive property. A through F and H, I would like you to use the regular form like this. So let's go on to example 2. Example 2. A restaurant chain purchased 95 pounds of potatoes for each of its 26 locations. About how many pounds of potatoes were purchased altogether? Well, we have this word about here, which tells us we're going to estimate. So I'm going to estimate to the problem. You never estimate the answer. So if I have 95 pounds, I'm going to estimate that up to 100. And 26 locations, I'm going to go ahead and leave that at 26. That's fine with me. You can round it to 25, a more compatible number. The book rounds it to 25, so I guess I'll do the same. So now I'm going to multiply my estimates. I am not multiplying the original numbers. I estimate and then I work out my number. Now, I can either multiply this way or I can turn the problem over like we have done in the past and move those zeros over. So those two zeros come straight down. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. So I have about 2,500 pounds. Okay, so here is my answer. Remember, it is okay to turn multiplication problems over, upside down like I did here. 100 times 25 or 25 times 100, they are the same thing. All right? Okay, let's go on to example 3. Okay, money problem. At 35 cents each, what is the cost of 2 dozen pencils? Well, 2 dozen is the same as 24 pencils because 1 dozen equals 12. So if 1 dozen equals 12, 2 dozen equals 24. So 24 pencils times 35 cents each. Ignore the decimal point for right now. All you're going to worry about is the multiplication. However, you have to remember to come back and put in the multiplication sign. So, we multiply by the ones place. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. Now I multiply by 30, so I put that placeholder of 0. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus this 1 is 7. Now I have my two partial products, so I'm going to add those up. 0, 4, 8. Now this is where my decimal point comes in. Whenever I'm multiplying by money, I have to have 2 digits to the right of the decimal. So if this was 840, my decimal would go here. But because this is money, I need to have 2 digits to the right of my decimal point. So I'm going to move my decimal point over and then put in my dollar sign. So 2 dozen pencils actually costs $8.40. Now if I left this at $840, I would say, wait, 35 cents, that's not even half of a dollar. Is 840 cents reasonable? No, it isn't. So if it's not a reasonable answer, you know you need to move that dollar sign, that decimal point. Remember, 2 places to the right of the decimal in money in all problems. All right, one more example. Example 4. This is where the distributive property comes in again. Benito wants to multiply 35 by 20 plus 4. Using the distributive property, show his 2 choices, then find the answer. Okay, so I have 2 choices. I can either 35 times 20 plus 4. I can either use PEMDAS and solving my parentheses, 24, write the rest of my problem, turn it vertically because we can't multiply large numbers horizontally. 4 times 5 is 20, 4 times 3 is 12, 13, 14. Multiply by 20, so I put my 0 as my placeholder. 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 0, 4, 8, 840. So for this side, I used PEMDAS. I added my parentheses and then I multiplied. My other option is to use the distributive property and say 35 times 20 plus 35 times 4. Then I can solve each of my parentheses. 35 times, oh, let's move that, times 20 is 700 plus 35 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20, 12, 13, 14. And now I can add my two partial products. 700 plus 140 is 840. Okay, this is using the distributive. I'm distributing the 35, distributive. I'm distributing the 35 to the 20 and distributing it to the 4. So either of these work. For letter G, you need to show both ways. So refer to example 4 when you are doing your work. Okay? PEMDAS or the distributive property. Okay, that's it. If you have questions, email me or ask me in the morning. Have a good night.